All right, good day, all. We are heading into our fourth lesson of our introductory unit for this federal government course. This will be the last of the lessons for this unit, and it deals with engagement in the process. And the process that we're talking about is the political process. And so our learning objectives and essential questions are: explain the importance of citizen engagement in the process, describe the ways in which Americans become engaged in the process, and describe the factors that might affect an American's willingness to be engaged. And our departmental learning outcomes are: analyze issues and policies in the United States and describe the rights and responsibility of citizens. So our essential questions: why is citizen engagement important in society? Number two, how do people become engaged in the process? And number three, describe factors that might affect an American's willingness to become engaged. So engagement in democracy. Citizen engagement is a vital thing in a democratic society, regardless of whether you ascribe to the elite or to the populist theory, right? So going back to that debate regarding elite and populism, pluralist theory, it doesn't matter what you believe in, participation in the government is important. In the elitist theory, voters can at least change who the elite are. So when you engage in the process through voting, you know, if you believe in the elite theory, you believe that there's not just a whole lot you can do, but what you can do is change those elite people. So maybe you can find somebody that's a little bit more friendly to your ideas and the strife that you might be engaged in. In the pluralist theory, government cannot function without active participation of some citizens, because remember, in pluralism, we have a society made up of a bunch of different interest groups that seek to affect government. So if you don't have people to participate in those interest groups, then you're not really going to have a successful democracy, which is, as we know from the Greek, demos, which is people, and kratic, which is rule, so it's ruled by the people. So what is the point in getting involved? Political scientists argue that civic engagement is actually on the decline. We don't see as much civic engagement as we might have seen in the past. There is in society typically involvement in large impersonal groups rather than small intimate groups. And so when we do see political engagement or civic engagement occurring in America, Americans are typically members of large impersonal groups like maybe Greenpeace or Amnesty International or the Sierra Club that have a huge number of people involved, and you can kind of be, quote, involved, engaged in the process, but engaged in a more anonymous way. Citizens are no longer involved in smaller, more civic organizations where they actually interact on a personal level with others. And so there are some explanations why. Increased women participation in the workforce. And because over the last 100 years, women have become more involved in the workforce, and they are out there working and making money, then you don't have people sort of rallying together in neighborhoods and things like that, and engaging in some of these smaller political groups that might work at the local level, because there's just simply not enough time anymore. Everybody is working. Decrease in marriages and increase in divorces is actually a reason why the engagement in democracy is on the decline. Because if you're married to somebody, then you can engage with other married couples who might be dealing with the same things that you are. But when you are divorced, things become a little bit more complicated. You might have to work more than one job to make ends meet. You probably have to take care of kids and things of that nature. And so because marriages are decreasing and divorces are increasing, we also start to see this affect political and civic engagement. Technology, and this is a huge thing. It is actually a positive thing for civic engagement, or it can be, but it actually takes out the intimate group situation, and it allows you to feel connected to the civic engagement, the political process, when you're actually more disconnected from it because you're at home behind a keyboard or behind a telephone or cell phone. And so technology, the rise of technology sort of takes away these small intimate groups because we're, more comfortable in modern society being behind a keyboard, a computer screen or something of that nature. And then the decline in social capital. And social capital is the value of social networks that get people together and the inclinations that might arise to do something collectively. So there's not just a whole lot of social capital anymore. Back in the older days, there were groups that would get together and they might, be a bowling team or go play cards or something of that nature. They'd get together on a weekly basis. And when they were together, they would naturally share their values and group with people who shared those values, and they might work together to do something in a collective manner if they wanted to change something about society. And guys, we're not necessarily talking about at the federal level. Yes, being involved at the federal level is important. Being involved at the local level is even more important because those things affect you more directly. And so when people have stopped participating in some of these social circles and the social capital is in decline, we're going to start to see civic engagement decline as well. Civic engagement can increase the power of ordinary people to influence government actions. So when you get involved in the process, even though you're an ordinary person and you don't feel like you can affect change, you actually can, because it gives it allows you to force the government to take actions on certain injustices or concerns. You can force the government to clean up vacant lots or pass city ordinances or build more parks or something of that nature. And so it sort of helps to level the playing field between those who have money and wealth and those who do not. And so when you get involved in that process, you don't have to be a wealthy individual to affect change. You can affect change just by getting involved at the local level. In a representative democracy, we must have citizen participation in some fashion by informed citizens. Because if not, we do not have a democracy. We do not have people being elected to represent the people. Engaged citizens are important because they familiarize themselves with the important issues facing the country or the community. And then they go out and they vote for a candidate that aligns with their views. And they tell representatives or they tell politicians how they feel about issues. At which point, these elected politicians or representatives can respond to the people. And so then you effectively influence policy. If you go to one of these town hall meetings and you talk to one of these politicians, and it's much easier at the local level, but you can do it at the federal level too. Then when you essentially share with them the struggles that you are having, it gives them fodder for legislation that they might pass to assist in these issues that might be plaguing society. And so politicians don't know what they don't know, and so you have to tell them what is going on. So how does a person get involved? It might sound like a daunting task to get involved, but it's really not. And one of the most simple ways to be involved is to simply stay up to date on issues and events facing the community or nation. And how do you do that? You do this by reading the newspaper, watching the news, and I would suggest you watch things like PBS or NPR. It's really easy for us to watch Fox News or MSNBC or one of those news stations that skews either left or right, but it's much better to watch a news station that is more middle of the road and neutral. And so this is where PBS comes in or NPR comes in, and even the BBC. That's a really good source because they're a foreign news station, and so they don't really have a dog in the fight, and so they're not going to skew it one way or the other. And to use reputable internet sources. Internet sources are important, and it's by and large how people get their news anymore, but you have to use reputable ones because anybody can get online and post something to the internet. But it could be some fool in their mother's basement behind a keyboard who has absolutely no idea what's going on, and then when we read it, it might influence us one way or another. So the key to this is to stay informed by using reputable sources. You can write or email your politician. This can even come in the form of filing a complaint with the city council. You can, affect change in that way and get involved in that way. Participate in public opinion polls. A lot of the times, public opinion polls, people will call homes, and we automatically hang up on them because we don't have time for it, and I get that. I get that. I work a lot. I have 2 children. It is what it is. We don't have time for that, but it is a way that you can be involved in the process. So if you can take 5, 10, 15 minutes and engage in those public opinion polls, do it. And that sort of leads politicians to know what it is that might be plaguing citizens. And then the most simple way, the most basic way to participate in the process is to simply vote, right? And you may feel like your vote doesn't count, but it does, especially at the local level. You elect mayors, city councils, school boards, state legislators, governors, members of Congress. They're all elected directly, meaning they all are elected by popular vote. And when you get at the mayoral level and the city council level and the school board level, guys, those affect you the most because they directly affect the ordinances that you pass, the ordinances that you follow within the city or the county. They affect your tax rate, your property tax rate. And so there is a famous quote, a politician, and I'm sorry I don't remember which politician to credit this to. It might have been Tip O'Neill, who was the Speaker of the House of Representatives at one point. But he asserted that all politics is local. And local politics are going to affect you way more than the presidential election or the senatorial elections. Those are more sexy elections, but the ones that really matter the most are going to be those at the local level. You can also attend political rallies, donate money, sign petitions. All of these are very simple ways to get involved. They're not very difficult. So what factors affect an individual's participation? Well, first of all, young people between 18 and 29 are less likely to be involved than older people, right? And there's a number of reasons for this. And one of the reasons for this is an idea called partisanship. And partisanship is the tendency of people to align with and support, often blindly, one political party or another. Okay? And this sort of is off-putting to many individuals, especially those younger people. Younger people are less likely to align themselves with one political party or another. They just want things to get done that are beneficial to them. And when partisanship occurs, it alienates a lot of these young people, and they don't participate in the process because they're simply angry at the process, angry at the partisanship and the polarization of society. And so it just sort of makes them angry, and they don't want to be involved in the process. Interest. Lots of campaigning is geared towards the older crowd. And why is that? Because the older crowd votes. Because they're affected by things like changes in Social Security and Medicare. And it's much more directly influence on their lives than it might be a younger crowd. Ideology is another reason that people are not necessarily involved in the process. And ideology is the established beliefs and ideas that help shape political policy. And ideology is very off-putting to individuals. And there's a significant divide between younger individuals and traditional political party ideology. And so we start to see more young people be very moderate, middle of the road. And even if they decide they are Republican, you're going to see more moderate Republicans, right? And even if you see them in the Democratic Party, they might be more moderate as well. But they're put off by the older individuals who are strictly divided by their political ideology for one reason or another. And who is it that really represents people in Congress? Old people. And so we have a bunch of older politicians in office who are individuals that essentially toe the party line. And oh, it says here young Democrats are more liberal. I'm sorry. I think I said they were more moderate. But young Democrats are more liberal. Young Republicans are more moderate. So you really have this battle between the old and the new. Old Republicans are extremely conservative. New Republicans are more moderate. Old Democrats are extremely moderate. Young Democrats are extremely liberal. And so you see this divide between the old and the new, the old guard and the new guard. Sometimes registering to vote is sort of a hassle. There is some confusion, especially with college students going to college outside of their home states. They don't really know how to register. It's kind of difficult to register to vote. And then some voter ID laws alienate some voters who might not have access to a government-issued ID. And so these really affect individual participation in the political process as well. And so this is where we're going to stop for this lecture. And after this lecture, you will need to move on to the discussion board and the unit quiz over this first unit. There will not be an exam over this first unit, but there will be a unit quiz. So if you have any questions, as always, please feel free to get in touch with me via one of my contacts. Thank you.